I'm not gonna lie to you folks, I have been thoroughly enjoying watching all of the drama and clips come out of the Republican National Committee thus far. Whether it be the culmination of Matt Gaetz and Kevin McCarthy's epic feud, which we just made a full video on that I'll link to above, but I'll play a short clip for you here.
Speaking. What night are you speaking? Are you speaking tonight? Or one person? No. Hey, you're not. If you took that stage, you would get booed off of it. You would get booed off the stage.
Or if it's Rudy Giuliani getting absolutely eviscerated by folding chairs like in this clip.
Oh my God, look at Seth Rollins. He's got Dean Ambrose up high. Elbows into the chairs. Oh my God. Power bomb into the chairs here.
But the real pinnacle for me so far happened today and was courtesy of the Lincoln Project, whose videos we've shared plenty on this channel, and we'll have a couple more in this video itself. But this stunt was a little bit different, though similar to something that the DNC did back in the past when Trump visited Capitol Hill. They brilliantly mocked Donald Trump using his own words in a rather ingenious, albeit potentially expensive way, by putting out these trucks that you'll see in a second that were playing clips that Donald Trump probably didn't want to see. Yep, those are multiple billboard advertising trucks that say Dictator on day one, Trump's own words, that have been driving around parading this message around Milwaukee where the RNC is being held. And it does feel like the ultimate troll because they're using Trump's own words against him and showing people what he actually wants to do when he gets power, namely be a dictator. And especially after the events of Saturday, you can almost bet that he will have no holds barred when trying to implement the tenets of Project 2025 or whatever whim comes to him if he takes the Oval Office. And Trump has obviously been trying to run away from a lot of these things that he's said previously. You saw him recently distancing himself from Project 2025, claiming that he knows nothing about it, even though that was immediately met with backlash and people proving that he in fact does. But he has continued to run away from his agenda and what he wants to do so that the public doesn't look at him as the clear threat to democracy that he is. And we cannot let him do that. And the Lincoln Project has done a great job of keeping track of those things and pointing out what the potential of a Trump presidency could look like. And I'll play as much of this clip as I can for you because it's got some potentially problematic footage, we should say. But I do want to refer quickly beforehand to something that Luke Beasley said in a recent video about the backlash that sometimes comes with making these historical references, but that is also crucially important, and you would be kind of just absolutely insane to not look at current events through the lens of past historical events, not necessarily to directly correlate them, but to add greater context and more historical context to what is currently going on.
I rarely hear people say Trump is Hitler because Trump isn't Hitler, because Hitler's a separate person than Trump. What I hear people say is, as we all should be able to do like adults, is analyze history as a way of understanding the present and predicting the future, right? To understand if we condone this sort of rhetoric, these sorts of positions, this attack on democracy, let's learn not that that's going to be what happens, the historical example, which is why I rarely cite particular historical examples because people's brains break. If you can't handle those sorts of historical comparisons, or Trump using phrases like poisoning the blood and us saying, hey, that comes right out of Mein Kampf. Oh, interesting. Why would he choose to do that? And then we raise awareness about that, and then he keeps doing it. So interesting. Or the other examples we've gone through, that's not saying he's going to do what Hitler did. It's not saying he is Hitler. It's just trying to draw on history to make comparisons of different authoritarian ideologies, okay?
Incredibly well said, and with that set up, here is that clip that I was referring to from the Lincoln Project.
In the 1930s, Hitler didn't just seize power. It was handed to him by the wealthy, by the powerful, by a compliant elite, by people who thought they were above the angry masses and violent anti-Semites. He was given power by Germans who knew what he believed, but thought they could contain him, control him, that his crazed speeches and dangerous antics were just for show, that his hatred would never turn on them. But like every dictator before or since, Hitler used his power to bring death, despair, and tragedy to the world. Before the world said, never again, millions of Germans believed, it can't happen here. Germany bet wrong in 1933, but we...
And look, I fully agree with what Luke said, because while no one on the left is trying to say that Trump and Hitler are the same person, when he uses rhetoric that is straight out of Mein Kampf, you have to be able to sit back and look at those things through a critical lens and through a historical lens and draw comparisons not only to how they are coming to power, but in the ways that they might abuse said power when they get it, which we've seen. And look, MAGA can get mad at us all they want about calling Trump a threat to democracy, which I vehemently push back on, that is what led to Saturday's events, because it's very much not, or that he wants to be a dictator, and believe me, they will complain. Here is actual footage of Ben Shapiro complaining about just that.
There's been a lot of focus from the media for the last 10 years, from the Biden campaign over the last several years, on the idea that President Trump is an incipient dictator. I mean, just days before the attempted shooting, President Biden was tweeting out that Donald Trump would be a dictator. The New Republic ran an issue in which the cover was a mashup of Donald Trump's face with Hitler's face. When you say that sort of stuff over and over and over again, as I've said, any shooter is responsible for what the shooter does. But if you keep turning up the temperature on the pot of water on the stove, you shouldn't be surprised when it boils over. And it seems to me that centralizing message that if your political opposition wins, it's the end of the country, that sort of talk is inherently dangerous.
Oh, Ben, way to be so on the nose for all the wrong reasons. We've talked so much already about how it is not calling Donald Trump a threat to democracy. It's not pointing out his obvious flaws or saying the facts that he is a criminal that led to those events. In fact, it is far more on the MAGA right-wing extremists and their violent rhetoric that we've already seen many of the repercussions of. It is far more on that than anything that the left has said. In fact, I'd also argue that Donald Trump himself has played a major role. Obviously, there are still facts coming out about everything that happened. There's an investigation underway, and these things could be overturned. They could be completely different. He could be a radical liberal or whatever, but every sign we have so far does not point to that. And here is Donald Trump himself admitting, albeit he says only on day one, that if elected, he wants to be a dictator.
We almost have to go to a break. I want to go back to this one issue, though, because the media has been focused on this and attacking you. Yeah. Under no circumstances, you are promising America tonight, you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
Except
Look,
what?
He's going crazy. Except for day one.
Meaning?
I want to close the border, and I want to drill.
That's
not
retribution.
He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one. We're closing the border, and we're drilling. After that, I'm not a dictator.
And that sort of rhetoric shouldn't fly in the U.S., in a democracy. And it's not even just the dictator stuff, too, right? He says he wants to close down the border without congressional approval. He says he wants to drill. As the leader of a party that doesn't believe in science or man-made climate change. And I, for one, do not think that we should back down on these facts that we're pointing out to people about how our institutions, our country, will be significantly pulled back by his policies and by the people who are providing him with said policies. There is so much more than just Donald Trump that will come from a Donald Trump presidency. And no one, not a single person on the left, sorry, I should clarify there, not a single person of power on the left. There are plenty of people who are progressive or liberal and are on the internet and are saying ridiculous things because that is what happens on the internet. People say ridiculous things, but there are no leaders of the Democratic Party that are calling for any kind of political violence the way that we have seen MAGA do time and time again. Real representatives, Republican representatives calling for these things. Thanks for watching. For Really American, I'm Kenny Hesse, and I'll see you all in the next one.